welcome or welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today's video is gonna be reading 1-star reviews on Goodreads of some of my favorite books that I read in 2023. So I'm super excited to film today's video. I've seen a lot of these on my feed on YouTube and I just think they're really funny. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video as much as I hope to enjoy reading 1-star reviews of some of my favorite books. So yeah, let's get started. Starting off strong with Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is actually, you know, I still haven't fully decided, but like in my head, Fourth Wing and Aimof, A Court of Mist and Fury, were my tied favorites for 2023. So we're starting off strong with Fourth Wing right now. Okay, so the first 1-star review of this book is by a person named Sue. It says, "The sad reality is this book will probably be Goodreads' best fantasy of 2023, though it has nothing of the fantasy elements. If I wanted to read cheap imitation of every other fantasy book, then this book it is." And then it has like the really mad emoji. "Every time I have an atom of hope that there is something 0.0000001% original, someone casually points out that it's not. This book is a memory quilt made from old stuff to look new. It takes everything that we know is familiar, comfort, and nostalgic and weave it together to present it as something new, giving you a fake sense of enjoyment. Let's imagine that I am a new reader, someone who never reads fantasy, or someone who hasn't read and loved the other books mentioned down. I would have absolutely adored this book and considered it one of the best adult fantasy this year because I knew nothing of them. And surprise, surprise, this is what's happening. But ignorance is not an excuse. Just because you haven't read it doesn't mean it is okay for this book to copy everything." Wow, this is a really long review. "This book attempted to give us a badass female lead that understands she is flawed and recognizes her physical incompetence, but does not give a shit. She knows her worth and trusts her intelligence to be her biggest asset, so she uses it to get what she wants. She's unapologetic. She knows that if she can't be cunning, it's her life on the line. I'll never get, quote unquote, I'll never get over how unquickly people move on here, how callously death is swept under a rug and trampled on minutes later." Oh, my Goodreads crashed. Well, I guess that means I have to stop reading that review. My thoughts on that review and my thoughts on fantasy in general having intermixed unoriginal content, in my opinion, I feel like personally it's not a problem unless it's like blatantly copying like verbatim an idea of someone else and turning it into a whole other book. I understand that and why people would be angry at that, but there are so many concepts in just like fantasy books in general that I feel like a lot of people sprinkle here and there into their own books, taking inspiration from other people's books. I feel like that's fine, and I feel like that's part of why I enjoy fantasy in general, because it's like just because I'm reading one series and see another idea, another aspect, another type of archetype, character, whatever, conveyed in another book doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. I feel like that's what I like because it's something familiar within other books, you know? And I understand why some people can get bored of it, but personally, I am not bothered by it. So, which is part of the reason why I love Fourth Wing. And part of Violet being like a badass female lead character, like knowing her intelligence is what is carrying her through the book rather than her physical strength, because she is not strong at all. I love that because, you know, I feel like I feel that way, you know? And so I love her because I see myself in her a little bit, and not that I'm really that badass, but I just feel like, you know, like my intelligence carries me more than any other aspect of myself. So that's what I have to say about that. Okay, continuing off strong, and since I already mentioned Aimof, I'm gonna do Aimof next. So this is by a person named Nenia. Warning, this contains a small spoiler for Aimof, so if you had not read the ACOTAR series and plan on reading it ever, which you probably should, skip this part. "I almost tossed this down in disgust 5 times while reading this book. I knew going in that I was going to be a massive act of revisionism with regard to Rysand, the villain of the first book. And as someone who loves villains and the Persephone myth, that could have been something I could have gotten behind under the right circumstances. But I wasn't truly prepared for the narrative gymnastics that this book would perform to try to redeem him without really making him do any legwork. By the end of the book, he's still a sleaze lord, only now he's a sad sleaze lord in leather pants who's actually the heroine's soulmate all along and an all-around nice guy. Pop a fedora on his head and he'd probably he'd probably quote unquote milady his way through the night court. The beginning of this book was great and very much in keeping with ACOTAR. Feyre has PTSD, understandable, and so does Tamlin, also understandable. And they're trying to heal and find love for each other. That was the fuel for Feyre to save him under the mountain in the first place. The passion between them in the beginning was great. Feyre's misgivings about ruling also made sense. I could even understand why Tamlin would want to be so overprotective. He felt like he had betrayed her in failing to keep her safe and was overcompensating for it in the worst way by essentially treating her like she was made out of glass. I love how long these are. Enter Rhysand, who makes good on his bargain to take Feyre back his court for 7 days a month. He actually ruins Feyre's wedding, where she's about to get married to Tamlin, but having a major case of cold feet and PTSD. Tells her that her wedding dress is ugly and that she should thank him for the effort of breaking things off because he is chef's kiss, a prince among men. Eye roll. He takes it upon himself to teach Feyre to read and write and is so shocked that she was allowed to be illiterate for so long. Which was kind of weird to me because I was pretty sure that Tamlin was actually teaching her how to read a book in one. Anyway, things between Tamlin and Feyre aren't so great when she gets back. She starts noticing that he's controlling, but they never really sit down and talk about it. She whines about it, but never discusses anything with him. And yes, while his behavior isn't great, locking her in the tower is hardly abusive. An abusive act that Feyre milked for all it was worth. It was bad, yes, but it's not like Rhysand was free of faults. Oh no, we'll be getting to that. And yet his past was wiped so clean it was practically sparkling. While Tamlin's smaller crimes are portrayed as the greatest wrongs in the history of wrongs. And you would think he would put her in some kind of prison camp for all she goes on about Tamlin locking her up and Rhysand freeing her. It was so annoying. I don't completely disagree with how Sarah J. Maas kind of so quickly villainized Tamlin and then so quickly switched over to Rhysand. I know a lot of people say Rhysand, but I like Rhysand, so I'm gonna keep saying Rhysand. But I don't disagree with that. I do agree that in Aimof, Tamlin was basically completely cut off in terms of just us hearing about him and also like any redeeming qualities that he had. And I agree that it's like that was just his natural instinct. And obviously he did it in such a horrible way to like want to protect her. He just like literally kept her locked up. But I mean, and that is not okay. But in a way, I understand why everyone did what they did. But I do agree that Tamlin was villainized too quickly and Rhysand was forgiven too quickly because he also did some pretty horrible stuff. And it was in the name of saving Valaris. It was in the name of saving his court. But, you know, that doesn't mean he's fully excused from all the horrible things he did. But I still love him. I'm Team Rhysand. I mean, of course you have to be Team Rhysand. But anyway, I don't completely disagree. Is it still one of my favorite books ever? Yes. Now moving on to The Cruel Prince. This is by someone named Warda. So, where to begin? Other than the slight addictive quality it had, which died for me after I passed the halfway point, this book was weak in every sense of the word. From the protagonist to the characters, the plot, and the world building, there was no development or growth that brought those aspects to life, not even the writing. The storyline started off quite tragic, with Jude's parents being brutally killed off from the bat. From that, I was expecting some kind of revenge story or emotionally harrowing character development, because to witness that when you're young will obviously take toll. But no, that wasn't explored. Right up the bat, our main character goes on to enter some kind of tournament she has no experience in whatsoever. There's nothing ingrained within her to take on this challenge, no power she embodies, intellectually or physically. I got angrier as I read on, and when it got to the last 50-odd pages, I refused to carry on, but I couldn't bring myself to care one bit. It wasn't that it was even mediocre. The whole book felt pointless to me. Initial reaction and review. Well, I'm pretty sure my soul just died. No, it is dead. I haven't hated a book this much since Caraval, and I don't tend to hate books often. I'm indifferent most of the time, and I do enjoy a lot of the ones I read, but this, God, I have no words. Review to come when I can feel again. Ugh. Wow. That was quite hateful. And I'll be honest, I didn't love the Cruel Prince trilogy. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't love it. But I do feel like the fantastical, whimsical world building of it, and I do somewhat agree there isn't much of a world building aspect. You're kind of just thrown into the world. But I feel like that's part of the appeal, in my opinion, that you're just like engrossed in this fantasy, like folk tale world, and you know, you aren't expected to know everything about the world. All in all, I don't disagree completely on like the nitpicky aspects of it, but I feel like as a whole, you know, I can't say that the book didn't have a point. And I do agree, like I guess I never thought about the main character Jude about what she went through and like whether she had a revenge story or not. But like if you continue through the books, like you kind of somewhat see her revenge story, even though it wasn't like completely intentional. Like that's how it panned out. Like she had her revenge story, so maybe she should keep reading. Now we're moving on to another Sarah J. Maas series, Throne of Glass. Right here on my bookshelf. So I'm doing the actual book Throne of Glass in this series. And this is by someone named Emily. Characters were badly written. The plot was full of telling instead of showing. Very underwhelmed after hearing years that this was the YA series to read. I don't mind unlikable characters. Heck, I love them. But I didn't feel I was supposed to dislike our main snowflake. So tired of the strong female character who can kill everybody in a heartbeat, but she's tiny and incredibly pretty. She hates all other women and, oh, everyone else wants her just because. So that was a really short review. But honestly, okay. As a whole, world building, side characters, like political aspects of the Throne of Glass series, I thoroughly enjoy. But do I love the main female character? No. And this is, I feel like, quite an unpopular opinion because so many like of the booktubers that I've seen who read, love, breathe Throne of Glass, like they love the main character in this book, Selena Sardathian. And I'm like, I don't get it, because what annoys me the most, it's not necessarily those aspects of her that I don't love. I'm like, whatever about that, because I feel like that's so common to make the female main character like so extremely badass. And you know, that's typical like a fantasy book. Like what kind of woman doesn't want to be girl boss and badass, you know? Like I want to be badass girl boss. But I don't love how she doesn't this is gonna sound so stupid. She doesn't communicate. She loves to keep things hidden from the people that she loves and never tell anyone what is going on ever. And I guess considering her background and like, you know, the prequel and everything and like what she went through, like whatever, I guess that's okay. But like at the same time, it gets so bad to the point where like I just like, I haven't read Kingdom of Ash, by the way, but like Tower of Dawn, Empire of Storms, like Empire of Storms, I just like was getting so frustrated with her at times. And yeah, that's my qualm with Selena. And last but not least, we are doing The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel. This is by someone named Emma. Always trust your gut. For example, here's my initial note on this book. Do I want to read this book? No. Well, I don't think so. Okay, I'm going to leave this here just in case. And if I had just gone with that feeling and absolutely sprinted in the opposite direction, we wouldn't be here right now, writing a rant review about a book whose main crimes are being boring and not as good as the actual series it's a prequel of. See? Even my complaints about it aren't interesting. Like, for example, this 1,000,000-page-long book would be more like 40 if you took out every usage of the protagonist's incredibly long names. Coriolanus and Lucy Gray, which they say constantly and always in full, plus the words cabbage soup for some reason. I don't disagree with that part. If you took out every reference to the title, we wouldn't have a book at all. And for another example, what if I told you this was one of the suckiest romances of all time? So awful I'm forced to use the already made up term sucky to the fullest extent English grammar will allow me. A love story between two boring teenagers, one who is a classist and a misogynistic and hateful and boring, and one who is born a woman and also boring. What if, hypothetically, the Lucy Gray character's main personality trait is that she writes and performs songs, and what if the songs are unbearable and corny even as everything else in the book rides on our ability to believe they, for a lack of a better word, slay? Wow. I'll be honest, I kind of loved reading that review. It was fun and a wild ride. And I disagree with that book. I thought it was a pretty well done prequel because it kind of makes you slightly empathize with President Snow and his background, because it's like, obviously from the get-go, the original Hunger Games trilogy, you hate President Snow's guts. But you learning about his beginning story, completely taking that out of the loop and just like thinking about the prequel and his story from the beginning, it kind of makes you empathize with him a little bit, like with the way that he grew up and why he turned out the way he did. And the way he turned out the way he did is horrible, and that shouldn't have happened. Like, he should have, and like, there was definitely evil within him from the start, which is why he turned out the way he did. But it's like, you know, nature versus nurture. So those are my thoughts. But I enjoyed the book. I thought it was a good prequel. And I thought the movie was good. So, and I love Tom Blythe. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. That is it for today's video. I'm sorry to say that my 2023 books that I read were not diverse whatsoever. It was literally every single book that I read was like a fantasy book, and like 1, 2, or 3 sprinkled in there that were not fantasy. So, but this year I am on a better track. So next year's video is going to be a lot more fun for you guys. So hopefully you guys had fun. I had fun. I thought that was really funny. But I will see you guys next time, and don't forget to like and subscribe.